All right, so we're back for another video class. I got a few things to go over. Uh, tonight because I'm doing this at night, but you all will see it throughout the day or the week. I'm been reading your first drafts of your personal experience essay, and so far they've been pretty good. Not a lot of complaints. Obviously, I'm speaking in a very broad sense here because I'm talking about all of the essays I've actually managed to get through. I still have a few, quite a few, as a matter of fact, to get to finish up with. Um, However, I will be emailing these out to you all at the same time. I'm not gonna, if I go over your essay first, you're not gonna get it a day or 2 days before anybody else does because the revision time frame is exactly a week from the day you get them back. Therefore, everybody's getting them back at the same time. So for the L48 and 50 B50, you all will have your essays back by Friday, and for 102, 1101, 102, y'all are going to have your essays back on by Thursday. So just check your email um, when you get those back. Again, you're going to see a series of comments, and they'll be in the little text boxes over in the right-hand corner. If you hover above those or click on them, it will show you my comment, and it will highlight the area in your essay. It'll highlight the text in your essay that I'm specifically referring to. So, uh, pretty effective way to do it. At least as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a lot more helpful and easier for y'all to use than me having to highlight something and then write in tiny little messy pen writing out in the margins and have y'all try to make sense out of that. So this is a much more effective way to do it, I believe. And I've actually heard from students who say that they prefer this to handwritten comments out in the margins and in between the spaces and all that. So you will have those back Thursday and Friday of this week. And if you want to do a revision, now remember, you don't have to do a revision. Um, if you're happy with the grade that you have, then you're done with that essay. No need to even bother with that. Now, I will say again, I still have quite a few to do, so I'm not judging this as a whole at this point because I have about a third of them done. And as I said, most of them are the overwhelming majority of them are sufficient, and they are following you are doing the assignment, which is a personal experience, a story about you that you are part of. However, I've had a very, very, very small amount that told a story about someone else um, that they had very little. The author, who should be the main character, the author had very little to do with the actual story. They were telling a story about someone else, and in a few of these instances, of someone else for various reasons. Someone they wanted to be like, someone that they knew or knew of or heard about. That's not the assignment. So even if it's very well written, that's not the assignment. So that's one of the, and I'll explain it all in the comments, but I just want to give everyone a heads up to sort of explain the summary comment. Now, there's going to be comments all throughout your essay, but at the very end is going to be for the initial grade. If you choose to revise, you can. And I'm going to put a brief summary of why it got that grade and how you can improve it if you choose to do so. I even, put some, if you get an A on the essay, I'll still put, hey, this is great, but work on this in the future. I always try to give you something to look out for and to improve on because, as I said, no matter how good it is, there's always room for improvement for anyone, not just a student, for anyone who writes at all. So pay close attention to those comments. Now, if your grade says incomplete, that means you did not do enough to finish the assignment. It's pretty self-explanatory, but what that means is that you did not receive a grade for that particular assignment. So if you do have and it's almost, aside from this minor exception, it's almost always because you simply didn't meet the minimum requirements. You know, if you gave me 2 pages, that's incomplete because the minimum length is 3 full pages. So if you give me 2 pages, no matter how well written they are, you did not complete the assignment. I mean, here's the way that the analogy that I use, because some people are like, well, if I only wrote 2 pages and it's really good, then why aren't you going to accept that? Well, look at it this way. Let's say you're taking a math test for your math class. There's 50 questions on that math test. You answer 30 of them. You get all 30 of those questions right, and you go, man, I'm awesome. I just answered all 30 of these math test questions. There's 20 more, but I've already answered all the first 30 correctly, so I don't need to prove myself. I'm done. And you just leave the last 20 questions blank on that 50 question math test. What's your grade going to be? Yeah, do the math. Okay, that's the same with these requirements. If I ask for 3 full pages minimum and you give me 2, you didn't pass that test. You left a third of that test blank. Literally, a blank. There's just not a third page. So the minimum requirements are that. They're minimum. If you go below that, then you'll get the grade that leaving 20 out of 50 questions empty on a bubble in or a math test would get you. So make sure you meet the minimum requirements. And if you do see incomplete, that's almost definitely what it's for. And I will explain it in the bottom. However, if you got an incomplete because you, again, wrote about something else or someone else's, if you wrote like a biography basically about someone that you know or someone that you admire, that's not the assignment. So you're going to get an incomplete for that because you did not do the assignment. The assignment, this is a story, a personal experience. You are the main character. Think of it like that. You're not, now you can talk about other people in there because if they're important to you in the story, of course, but if it's basically you talking, the entire essay is just you writing about someone else, you're just narrating someone else's story. You're not narrating your own story, which is what you're supposed to be doing. So, I just wanted to give a more detailed explanation in this video, but also read the comments very carefully. But, so far so good. And remember, this is a first attempt. So regardless of what you see when you get these back later this week, do not get discouraged. First drafts are just that, and that's why they're more commonly referred to as rough drafts. Okay, so another thing that I want to talk about that I haven't seen too much of an issue with this, but it has kind of peaked up a little bit, peaked up as a little ugly head. This is my preference. I love details. I think good writing has detail. Instead of just saying, well, she drove up in a fancy car. Okay, well, I mean, that's sufficient, that gets the point across, but don't leave it like that. You want the reader to be able to picture what it is you're describing. She pulled up in this shiny red glistening car that roared like thunder. I looked at the hood and saw the yellow rectangle with the black prancing horse on it, and I knew immediately that she was in a Ferrari. So you make it dramatic, make it vivid, or if it's a jalopy or just a complete bucket, describe it like that. The front right fender was missing, and when it started, it made a puff of smoke that looked like a bomb had gone off out the rear end. when it started rolling down the road, it sounded like someone dragging a bunch of chains behind it, clanking and banging and popping and smoking. Describe it, man. If it's a hoopty, if it's a bucket, describe it like that. You know, say hey, I didn't know rust was a paint color for a car. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, be descriptive. You can be funny, you can be dramatic, whatever. Just be descriptive. But when you give your details, make sure that they're relevant. And what I mean by relevant details is that they actually are adding something to the story that is important to the story. Don't just describe something in furious detail that's really not even important to the big picture, to the actual story that you're telling. Um, for instance, let's say like if you're writing for this personal experience or something. Let's say if you're writing about a first date you went on with someone, okay? And remember, we have to pick where we start our essays. We have to pick where we start. Where do I start? Do I start? Obviously, the simple answer is start at the beginning, but that's not the only way to do it. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what is the actual beginning for this story? If I'm telling a story about something that happened my senior year in high school, am I going to begin and it was mid-August in 1995 in Mrs. Field's second grade class. I'm not going to start in second grade and talk you guys through every single grade and write about it and then finally and now what this story is really about is my senior year in high school. Well, why'd you just tell me your life story from second grade to senior year of high school when the story is about your senior year in high school? Start with the senior year in high school. But then you have to ask yourself, where do I start? What's my focus? Is it going to be one day? Is it going to be a week? Am I going to try to fit the whole senior year in 5 paragraphs? That's probably not a good idea. And if you can and you can do it adequately, you had a pretty boring senior year. So that's important, just as important as what's going to determine your relevant details. So let's go back to this story. If I'm telling a story about like a first date with someone, okay, what's going to be the important part of that story right away? I'll give it a super generic title. My first date with so-and-so. Oh. The title right there should tell the reader, and remember, this isn't a mystery novel. This isn't Agatha Christie or something. We're not down for that. Now the title can be clever, but if the title is My First Date with So-and-so or First Date from Hell, how about that? That's better. That's got a little mystery to it, and it's going to have, the reader is going to see that title and go, ooh, First Date from Hell. This should be interesting. That's what the story should be about, right? It should be about the actual date. So if it's I'll just say a 5-page, I'm not going to use the paragraph count. If it's a 5-page essay, and I spend the first 3 pages describing me driving over to this person's house to pick them up for the date, and then I spend a page and a half talking about the date, what have I done? Well, first of all, my title's a lie. I lied to the reader. It wasn't The Date from Hell. It was the extremely long and boring drive on the way over to pick up a date that didn't go very well. That's what the title should have been, not The Date from Hell. If that's the title, then that's what the bulk, the overwhelming bulk of the essay should be about, is that crazy, horrible date. So that's where the focus should be, and that's where the relevant details come in. So it could be something like, now again, you have to pick where you start. So do I start when we get to the restaurant? Do I start when I go to pick her up? Well, that might be fine. Yeah, let's just do that. So it was about 6:45. I was supposed to be there for our first date at 7, but me being the gentleman that I am and thinking I'd be suave, I'd show up 15 minutes early. Ha, smart thinking, right? So I pull up to the driveway and I notice this colonial style house that's approximately 1,700 square feet. It has a terrace with some Doric-like columns. The front facade is brick, but I don't believe that the whole house is brick. Perhaps I could sneak around the side and see if it's actually a brick front with siding on the sides and the back. I wonder if there's a porch in the back. Maybe I should go around and see if there's a porch. I'm really dying to know. Perhaps there's a pet, maybe a dog in the backyard. Is it fenced in? Should I go there? I wonder what condition the roof's in. There might be some hail damage and they might need to use their homeowner's insurance to get a free roof. I know someone that they can call. In fact, I have a friend who does roofing for insurance companies. Maybe I'll ask her when she gets here for our date, which is the important part of this essay and what this story is supposed to be about. Maybe I'll ask her if she has hail damage and has homeowner's insurance that could possibly get her a brand new roof from my buddy at JB's Roofing. You see what I've done there? Those are all completely irrelevant details. Me picking this person up at the house is just literally a vehicle, but also a plot device to, or a vehicle for the story to move the story from the beginning of the date, which I chose kind of arbitrarily when I picked her up. Then, we got to name the restaurant and stuff, and we got inside and sat down, and it was really loud. There was a lot of noise, and I don't know how they were doing it, but people were vaping, so there was like smoke all over the place. It was crazy. So this date was starting off bad, and then she sits down and she just sits there staring at me. That's when we get into the real details, and I did notice that. She kept looking at my right shoulder, and I kind of kept looking down. And finally, I looked at my right shoulder and noticed that there was a big stain on it, or a booger, or something, whatever. That's when you get into those real details, is when the date actually starts, and that's where and then you're going to build up to, if it's called The Date from Hell, unless it's an ironic title. We're expecting the reader, as a reader, based on that title, we're expecting to get right into that. Like, the waiter came out with our drinks, and um, he tripped as he was putting down her glass of red wine, and it flew out of his hands and went not only over her face, but got all over her white shirt, and now her shirt looked like she had her throat slit or something. You want to go into those details and be super descriptive. And it's gonna, it can make the reader jump back, make the reader laugh, make the reader cry, whatever. You want to evoke those emotions by painting a picture with your words. You don't want to you're not giving a police report, you know. Arrived at 261 Belmont Street, picked up subject. Subject got into passenger seat, drove approximately 2.7 miles to destination restaurant, parked, went into restaurant, got seated, table 14, sat down, ordered. That's just describing the events as they happen, and almost mechanically. That's a police report. You're not given a police report. Now, if your date from hell truly did turn into an ultimate date from hell, you might have been getting a police report by the end of it. But your essay shouldn't look like that. Your essay should be energetic. It should be vivid. The images should pop. There should be imagery. When the person's reading it, they should see what you're describing, not just the words on the page. For those of you who actually read for fun, and I'm not making fun of anybody if they don't. I'm just saying, for those of you that actually do read for pleasure or just to relax, think about the really good stuff that you read, the great books that you read, where you're watching a little movie in your head. You're seeing it as you're reading it. You're seeing what these characters look like, hearing what they sound like, and it's because you're doing part of it. Reading is active. You as the reader are doing a big part of this, but if the writer is doing their job, then they're filling in those blanks for you. You're like, well, I wonder what I wonder what this guy William looks like and sounds like. And then you get to this great description. William was about, average height, probably just under 6 feet, had on a tattered dinner jacket with a bunch of stains on it. One looked like it was definitely mustard. The other two, no idea. blah blah blah. You know, you just go into this great details, and you know, his hair was unkempt and fell over his left ear, but his right ear was exposed. It made him look like he was walking sideways when he was walking straight. You know, stuff like that to build the character and give the description. Those are relevant details. But if you spend 2.5 pages describing the front door of the house that you picked the person up to take on a date, and you spend a paragraph talking about the date, you lied to the audience about what your essay was about. You called it The Date from Hell. No, it was an incredible description of someone's front door and a paragraph about a bad date. So keep that in mind. Relevant details are the most important. Now, details, you got to have them, but make sure that you spend time on the ones that matter. I mean, if just picking this person up to get to the point where the actual what you want to really talk about takes place, you don't even have, you could just cover that cursory, just barely. You say, you know, I picked her up at about 7:15 and we got to the restaurant right at 7:40, just in time to get to the dinner rush. That's enough to set the stage. You could do that in 1-2 sentences right at the beginning of the essay in the intro. You know, that would set the stage, and then the rest could be all of those crazy things that happen for the next hour and a half, 2 hours that you're on this horrible date. So that's what I mean by relevant details. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide what's important and what's not. Do I really need to go into more detail about this, or can I just kind of glance over this to make sure it's there, but then move on to something that I think is more important? That's up to you. That's all a judgment call. That's just part of the writing process. So if you do that, you'll be fine. Now, there is, I have my little board open up over here. There are a couple of things that I do want to cover real quickly. And then I'll probably just, you know, end this video for tonight. I did briefly talk about the Oxford comma, and I want to kind of, let me make this font bigger here. Go to a 26. Oh, and also with the essays, most of you have been doing your MLA format correctly, but some of you aren't. Some of you did. I received one essay that had nothing, didn't even have a name on it. If I did it, it was just text. If I didn't have it from that person's email address, I would have no idea who wrote the essay. It was just a block of text, not even in paragraphs. Just that needs to be fixed. And if you're watching this and you did that, you know who you are. Fix it. So with commas, when you're listing items, this is what's called the Oxford comma. And I've talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of illustrate to you why it's important. And this has been going on for quite a while, but I noticed that in the past 7 or 8 years, it's been getting worse. And that is where a lot of, I would say as early as middle school, because I know because of my family, in middle school and high school, for some reason there's, and I would assume that there's some college English teachers doing this, but I personally don't know any, and I know a lot. This drives all of us crazy, by the way. A lot of middle schools and high schools are teaching students to not use the Oxford comma. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out, but I'm going to show you a visual of why it's important. So if I said, let me just think of something here. Oop. And I've already shown you this, a similar thing to this, but I want to go over it again because I noticed that some of you are not doing this. Okay, so there's my sentence. For breakfast, I usually have eggs, toast, and orange juice. Now, this is without the Oxford comma right here. We'll just call it the OC. No Oxford comma. All right, so most of us figure out what this means. We think of that, we visualize it, we see a plate with some eggs, toast, and a glass of orange juice, right? Well, not really, because the Oxford comma, without the Oxford comma here, we're seeing something different, because without this comma in written form, without this comma after toast and before the conjunction and, without that there, the toast and the orange juice are in the same space. They're not separate. So that would basically mean that you have a plate with some eggs on it, however you like them. Would you like them over easy today? However you like your eggs are on that plate, and then somewhere on the plate is either a glass of orange juice with a piece of toast stuck in it, or a piece of toast with orange juice poured over it. But the orange juice and the toast have to be, the way that's written, the orange juice and the toast are occupying the same space. They're not separate. And, you know, I like to dunk. I'm a dunker, but I'm not going to be dunking my buttered toast in orange juice. That ain't going to happen. So that Oxford comma, when you're listing things, I say it has to be there. And if we look here, I got this little visual aid. They're all separate, right? Eggs, toast, OJ. They're all completely separate from each other. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. If I'm eating eggs and toast, part of my toast is going on, those eggs is going on my toast, you know, but when they initially get there, if I'm at like Waffle House or something, they're separate, right? So if I go down here, here's what it looks like without the Oxford comma. You've got your eggs right here in this box, and then your toast and OJ are just in the same thing. They're together. Whether you put the toast in the glass or you just pour the orange juice over the toast. So yes, with Oxford comma, without. Now, where you wouldn't put it there is if the two things were in fact occupying pretty much the same space. You know, so it said, my new car is blue and red. Now that's not very descriptive, but remember, I'm using these examples to be explicit, obvious examples. I would never, I'm a car nut, I would never describe a car as blue and red. You know, I'd be getting into a lot of detail, but for illustration purposes, my new car is blue and red. Now, I wouldn't put a comma there because the car is both blue and red. Let's say if it's let's say if it's got like a scallop down the side of it or something, or the hood. You know, that's a lot of cars have multiple different colors on different body panels. You know, what if my car has a blue roof and the body of the car is red? What if the bottom half of the side panels and the door are red on the bottom half, and then the top half is blue? That's very common. It's very common for cars to be two-tone, even some three-tone. You know, think about it. So the car is both blue and red. That's there would be no comma there. But when they are separate, you have to have that comma. Oops. Wow. If they're like Christmas lights, the Christmas lights were blue, red, and green. Each little bulb is a different color, right? You got a blue bulb, you got a red bulb, and you got a green bulb on those little strings, you know, that people throw up around their houses and whatnot. So the lights were blue, red, and green. Those are all three separate colors. If I said the lights were blue, red, and green and didn't put the comma here, then that means I've got the blue lights are separate, but then somehow there's one bulb that's red and green. Maybe they flash. but they're still, you need that comma there. So hopefully that helps you all out with the Oxford comma. Please put it there. Not just because it's a pet peeve of mine, it's because you need it. And hopefully this just um, helped to illustrate that. So no, I don't want to save it, cancel. So make sure that you use that. Um, I'm not gonna, take points off your essay if you don't do it. But I get in the habit of doing it. Because just because I don't doesn't mean somebody else won't, because they can. Uh, and it's just a good habit to get into if you're not already into it, because it's clear. Now, unless you're trying to be some weird, mysterious, esoteric person who's writing in riddles that only you get or only certain people get, clarity should be one of your biggest priorities when you're writing. Regardless of what anybody tells you, people who say, I write for myself, nobody else. That's because that's usually, I'm not going to say all the time, but usually that's because they don't want to they don't want to face it when somebody says, well, what you write here makes no sense. Well, it makes sense to me, so that's enough. Well, if it makes sense to you, you've got it up here, so there's no need to write it down. You write stuff for other people to read, and clarity should be part of that so that other people can understand what you're trying to convey. And it's a two-way street. Just, if you're writing it clearly and somebody just doesn't get it, that's not your fault. But you want to be as clear as possible. You want your writing to be as clear as possible. And that's gonna have the best results. So this kind of an informal chat tonight, but I did want to go over those particular things, and I am just going to let you know that the next essay is going to be what's called an analysis essay. I'm not going to go into anything about it tonight, but an analysis is just that. And I'll leave it at that because it actually is a lot more complicated, or can be a lot more complicated than it sounds. And what I'm going to try to do in the next session is to make it as uncomplicated as possible. Because analysis is kind of one of those words that everybody knows what it means, but if you ask, well, what is it? What does it mean? Well, it's an analysis. Well, can you define it without using the word analysis? Well, it means to analyze something. Well, that's just a verb form of analysis. It's So I'll try to make it as clear as possible, and that's what we'll be doing next session. So until then, you will get your essays back. If you want to revise them, please do and get them back to me. And I will get them back to you as soon as possible. And remember, if it goes from a C to an A, your grade on that assignment is an A. It's not an average between the two. You get the higher of the two. Outright, no average. All right, so y'all take it easy, and I will see you next time.